Losing a key team member in the middle of summer, well, that is one of the most disruptive and expensive things that can happen to your early childhood business. You've invested months in training, culture building, and relationship development, and then a 2-week notice lands at the worst possible time. Now, most operators only find out why someone left during an exit interview, if they even have them at all. And there is a better way. The mid-year check-in is a structured conversation that surfaces what your best people are thinking before they start looking elsewhere. So when you conduct meaningful retention conversations proactively, you don't just prevent turnover, you actually build the kind of team culture where your best people choose to stay. Well, hey there, CEOs. Welcome to the Early Childhood Business Made Easy podcast. I'm Kelly Peak, and I'm here this week again to help you find some more of that time, freedom, and profit you so deserve. Now, we're only a few weeks into summer program for many of us, but hopefully your team is operating well and you're finally starting to feel like summer might actually be okay. But I remember that feeling like things were finally going smoothly, and then the dreaded conversation that hit hard for me. One of our best team members asked to talk to me privately, and she sits down across me, and before she says a single word, I already knew. She had found another position. She had been with us for 4 years. She knew our systems. Our families trusted her. Our newer team members, well, they looked to her when they weren't sure what to do. And she was leaving in 2 weeks. So I asked her why. And what she said is what stayed with me for weeks after. I just didn't feel like there was a future for me here. I didn't think anyone really saw what I was bringing. Wow. She didn't want more money. She wanted to be seen. So if that story sounds familiar, I feel your pain. Turnover in early childhood businesses, it's one of the most persistent and expensive challenges that our industry faces. And one of the primary drivers of that turnover, it really isn't just compensation or working conditions. They both matter. Those are both issues for sure. But it's the feeling of being unseen, unheard, and unknown in a role that requires enormous emotional investment every single day. Now, the hardest part about that particular story, the conversation to prevent it could have happened months earlier. The signals were there, the window to keep her was there, but nobody asked. So today we're talking about how to have the conversation that changes that outcome. We're covering number 1, read the warning signs of disengagement before someone hands you a resignation. Number 2, conduct a meaningful mid-year pulse check that's going to open that real conversation. And number 3, follow through on what you learn in a way that makes your best team members want to stay. Now, before we get started, I want to remind you about the free resource for today. It's the Team Pulse Check. It's a 2-part document that's going to give you and your team member a structured form to complete before the meeting so that that conversation starts with substance rather than just small talk. So get that at kellypeak.com around this podcast, episode number 187. Your team members are essential to your summer operations and, more importantly, to your fall launch. And the team members you lose in the summer, well, they rarely quit without warning. They quit after months of feeling maybe unseen, unheard, or undervalued, and you didn't know because nobody asked. So that mid-year pulse check, that's how you're going to ask before it's too late. Here's something that took me a couple years to fully understand. Exit interviews, they are too late. By the time someone is sitting across from you explaining why they're leaving, the decision was made weeks or months ago. You are hearing a postmortem, not a conversation with any path back. And the operators who retain their best team members, they don't do it by paying more, though fair compensation, again, that matters enormously, but they do it by having proactive conversations that make team members feel genuinely valued and genuinely heard. And those conversations have to happen while people still have a reason to be hopeful about their future, not after they've already found one somewhere else. So that mid-year check-in, it doesn't require a special skill or a lot of time. We do it in about 10 minutes per team member. It requires the intention to ask. And unfortunately, some people just don't do that. But it also requires consistency, which means you have to do it regularly and make sure they know it's coming. So just doing it puts you in a completely different category as a leader. Now, the numbers are hard to ignore. The Center for American Progress estimates that replacing a single team member, well, that's going to cost you between 16 and 20% of a person's annual salary when you factor in recruitment, hiring, onboarding, and the productivity gap during that transition. In the early childhood world, where most team members are hourly and the work is deeply relationship-based, that cost can compound in ways that don't always show up on a spreadsheet. Disrupted ratios, unsettled families, newer team members who lose their primary source of mentorship, and a cultural regression that can take a year to recover from. Child Care Aware of America reports that annual turnover rates in the early childhood field specifically, they are between 26 and 40% in center-based settings, with the highest rates occurring in summer and late fall. So what this means for your early childhood business is that retention, it's not nice to have. It is a core operational strategy. And proactive retention conversations are among the highest return investments a CEO can make in June. So a childcare director that I worked with, she had been losing one or two key team members every summer for the last about 4 or 5 years. It's not an unusual pattern in this industry, but it definitely is a draining one. She had great instincts and genuinely cared about her team, but she never built a structured system for having the proactive retention conversations she knew needed to happen. So the summer, she implemented this mid-year pulse check, which honestly, I really recommend that you do in February, but if you haven't done it yet, we're going to do it in June. So we're going to talk about it today. So moving forward in the future, do it in February and then in June. She had that with her top 4 team members. She discovered something that changed her entire fall planning. 2 of the 4 were actively considering leaving, not because they were unhappy with the work, but because they each had a specific growth aspiration that the director just didn't know about. One wanted more responsibility in curriculum planning. One wanted a pathway toward an assistant director role. So neither had said anything because they just didn't think the opportunity had existed. But by the end of the summer, both had written developmental plans. Both had expanded roles and both were still there the following May. The director didn't spend any money she wasn't already planning to spend. She just asked the right questions at the right time. She leads her team now as a confident early childhood operator with a reputation in her community for being a place where educators actually grow. It's a place where there's not only a wait list for kiddos to get in, but also team members to work there. That reputation, well, it fills her open roles before she even has to post them. So I want to help you get to that place as well. We're going to start with our CEO strategy number 1. Read the room before they walk out the door. So most team member departures, they don't come as a surprise in retrospect, but in the moment, they often feel like one because operators miss the signals. The warning signs of disengagement are usually subtle, especially from your most professional team members who continue to show up and do good work even when they're quietly weighing their options. So understanding these signals is about being present enough as a leader to notice when someone who usually brings the energy, they bring the engagement and the initiative, that starts pulling back. So that shift is information and it's available to you long before that resignation comes across your desk. So the 4 signals worth watching as you move through the summer, the first is withdrawal from team conversations. So engaged team members, well, they ask questions, they share ideas, and they contribute to discussions. Disengaged ones, well, they go through the motions. If someone who used to be the first to offer a suggestion in a team meeting has gone quiet for a few weeks, that's noticeable. The second is reduced investment in outcomes. So they're completing the work, but they've stopped advocating for better approaches. The what if we tried this conversation? Well, those have kind of dried up. They're doing the job without caring for how it turns out. The third is disappearing future language. So pay attention to how your team members talk. Phrases like, next year we could, or when fall enrollment happens, let's do this. Signal engagement with the future of your business. That is something that you pay attention to. When those phrases stop, it often means someone has mentally checked their timeline. And the fourth, it's kind of a particular depletion. So summer is tiring for everyone in early childhood. That's normal. But there is a specific quality to the exhaustion of someone who is emotionally disconnected from the work they're doing. A flatness that goes beyond just being physically tired. Trust yourself to recognize the difference. So none of these signals confirm that someone's about to leave. Any of them could have other explanations, but they're all worth a conversation. And that team pulse check is exactly the right structure for that conversation. The goal is not to corner someone who is thinking of leaving. It's to create the space for them to tell you what's actually going on before the decision is made. So 2 action steps here. Number 1, think of your top 2 or 3 team members, the ones whose departure would impact you most significantly, especially to your summer operations and your fall momentum. Do a private audit. Have any of those 4 signals appeared in their behavior over the last month? Write down what you notice. Now, this is not about judgment. It's just about paying attention. Action step number 2, Download the team pulse check at kellypeak.com, episode number 187, and schedule a pulse check meeting with a couple of those key team members before the end of July. Again, if you haven't already done this, do this now. The scheduling of it is really the hardest step. Then you're going to get some answers and some information. Maybe everything's great, and that's just going to give you more peace of mind. Okay, on to strategy number 2, the mid-year pulse check conversation. So the team pulse check, it's not a performance review. I want to make this very clear. This distinction matters enormously because if your team member walks in expecting a performance evaluation, well, the dynamic is going to be completely wrong for what you're trying to accomplish with this conversation. A performance review is to evaluate. You hold the assessment and you deliver it to your team member in a way that allows them to really feel like you're there to understand what they are needing in the moment. You're not there to really review them. The power flow is really one direction, and the team member's role is to receive feedback and respond to it in an assessment, where in a pulse check, it's really for you to receive that feedback. So even in the most positive and supportive performance conversations, the evaluation structure, it creates a specific kind of guardedness, and that's what you don't want in a pulse check. A pulse check is connective. Both parties prepare and both parties contribute. You complete the team leader pulse check form before the meeting with the 3 sections: genuine appreciation, noting strengths and things to celebrate, areas for improvement or concern. This is written with clarity and care. Remember, you're not reviewing them. You're just really identifying anything specific, especially as it pertains to maybe the summer season you're about to go into. And then growth opportunities, covering why you believe this person is ready for the next step and how you want to support them in getting there. Now, your team member is going to complete their own form with their own 3 sections. What I love about my role and this business, things I would like to see differently, and where I would like to grow and add more responsibility. So both forms come to the meeting, and neither is a surprise. So how you conduct the meeting matters as much as what you discuss. So start with a genuine appreciation and lead with yours. Read what you wrote before you even ask them to share. This signals immediately that you showed up, you are prepared, and most importantly, you're prepared to value this person. You're not there to just evaluate them. That sets the entire tone of what's going to follow next. When you get to the areas for improvement or concerns, lead with your own first. If there are things you want to improve on as a leader, if there are things you wanted to handle differently, naming them before you ask your team member, that allows you to be vulnerable. And that's going to create the kind of psychology safety that honest conversations require. Then you have the growth opportunity suggestions. This is where the retention conversation actually lives. What you learn here is the answer to the question you most need answered. Does the path this person is imagining for themselves exist inside your business? If it does, then your job is to make that visible and make it real. But if it doesn't exist yet, your job is to decide whether you can build it, whether you need it, and really being honest with them about maybe the limitations if you can't. So end every pulse check with a specific named next step. Not, let's just talk more about that, but I will follow up with you and I would like to do X, Y, and Z by this date. The specificity is what turns a good conversation into a retention action. Now, your 2 action steps here. Number 1, print both forms of the team pulse check before your meeting. Complete the team leader form in advance. Be honest. Don't fill it out in the parking lot before the meeting. The quality of your preparation, it directly communicates to your team member how much you value this conversation. Okay, action step number 2, when you send the meeting invitation, attach the team member form and ask them to complete it before they arrive. Give them at least a couple of days to think about things. The team member who has time to reflect before the meeting, well, they bring more honest and useful ideas to the conversation than one who is just answering questions cold. Okay, on to CEO strategy number 3. Turn the conversation into a retention plan. So the most common and costly mistake operators make after a pulse check is doing nothing with what they learn. The conversation goes well, the team member feels heard, everyone walks away with such good intentions, and then 2 weeks pass and maybe nothing changes. That experience is actually worse for your retention than not having the conversation at all, because now your team member has proof that speaking up, well, it doesn't lead to action. And the next time you schedule a pulse check, they're going to either decline it or they're going to show up without any real honesty because they've learned it doesn't matter. So the follow through, that's where the actual retention happens. It's where a good conversation becomes a real reason to stay. So 3 specific follow through commitments that are going to make a real difference. First, Close the loop within 5 business days. Whatever surfaced in that growth opportunity section, respond with a concrete update within a week. You don't have to have the full answer or a complete plan. You have to show that you're looking into it, you're taking it seriously, and you're really thinking about it. A message that says, I've been thinking about what you shared about wanting more curriculum responsibility, and I want to talk about what that could look like starting in September. That is worth more than a perfect plan delivered 6 weeks late. Second, put one item from their feedback into visible action. Not something that you quietly change in the background, but something your team member can directly trace back to the conversation they had with you. Now, this doesn't have to be large. A small change made visible tells your team member something that no amount of verbal affirmation can. It says what you say to me here changes what happens here. This means I trust you. It's the foundation of trust, and it means I really understand that you care about me and you value me. And third, schedule the next pulse check before you leave the current one. So again, we like to do these in January, February, and then again in May and June before school is out. If you wait until you remember to schedule it, it's not going to happen. So if you automate it and make it just something that happens every single year, the first week of February, the first week of June, you know that it's going to happen. That is a message that sends this reoccurring commitment and that you value your team. It's not a one-time initiative. It's part of what's making the system work. Now, the team culture blueprint, that covers the complete framework for building a culture where conversations like these are normal rather than the exception. So go to kellypeak.com, shop resources, and you can find out more about it. Before any system, the most important thing you can do is to have that first conversation. So schedule one pulse check this week, complete the form, and then show up prepared. Follow through. That single conversation done well, it's going to change what your team members believe about what it means to work for you. It's going to really show them that you are a CEO. You lead with clarity. So 2 action steps here. Number 1, after your first pulse check, block 30 minutes and within 5 days, review your notes and identify one concrete follow-through action. Write it down, put it on your calendar, send a brief message to whichever team member that you did a pulse check with, and let them know you haven't forgotten. Action step number 2, go to kellypeak.com, review that team culture blueprint, and ask yourself, does my business currently have a repeatable system for the kind of proactive team conversation that we talk about in this episode? If no is the answer, that blueprint is going to give you a system so you can have one for the summer. Now, those 3 strategies, reading the room before they walk out the door, conducting a meaningful pulse check conversation, and following through in a way that shows team members their input matters, that's what separates early childhood operators who keep their best people from the ones who are constantly rebuilding their teams. So my friend, I want you to start this week. Go download that team pulse check, schedule a meeting with one key team member, and complete both forms before you show up. The conversation you're about to have is going to be one of the highest leverage things you can do for your summer operations and your fall momentum. And if you're ready to build a complete team culture system rather than having these conversations in isolation, don't forget that team culture blueprint is exactly what you need. It's going to give you a complete structured system for building a culture where your best team members thrive, grow, and stay. It covers retention frameworks, communication protocols, onboarding systems, and the meeting cadence that makes a team feel led rather than managed. Again, go to kellypeak.com, shop resources. It's going to be one of the most impactful investments you can make in your business before fall. Now, here's what I know about you, my friend. You built this business to make a difference, and you cannot do that without a team that is genuinely invested in the mission alongside you. The team members who stay for years, who become the culture of your business, who families trust and children adore, that doesn't happen by accident. They stay because someone asked them how they were doing. They listened to the answer, and they did something about it. Be that leader. Have that conversation. You got this. Take care, and I'll see you next week.